A BRZ Limited is around $30,000 new, and on this episode of Eat Sleep Drive, we're going to talk about several modern Porsches that you can buy for BRZ money. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eat Sleep Drive. It's December here in Ohio. I'm out here freezing my ass off, trying to get some filming in. I should probably just do this inside. Why don't I do it inside? I don't know. But today I want to talk to you guys about Porsche, specifically the modern Porsches that you can buy for under $30,000. Now, I can already hear the keyboard warriors and the haters out there saying, why would you buy a Porsche under $30,000? You're gonna have to spend so much money on repairs, blah, blah, blah. I'm not here to argue that. Like, it's your decision whether you want one of these cars or not. You do the research, but I want to give you guys a breakdown of all the Porsches, and when I say all the Porsches, all the modern Porsches, because there's so much Porsche that you can buy for under $30,000 right now. So we're going to talk about all of those specifically and give you some details on what you should look out for if you are interested in buying those cars. Now, the first one I want to talk about is almost one of the most expensive ones you can buy new, but is almost the cheapest now, and that's the Porsche Cayenne. This is an SUV that sort of reinvented the SUV market. A sport SUV, something that people like Porsche enthusiasts never thought that they would make an SUV, but they did, and it's amazing. It's so much car for the money. You can find them under $20,000, the first generation of them, under $20,000 all day long. Now, as with any car, especially a German car, I would try and stay away from the early model years.
You idiot. You just bought an early model year 997.
So there are a couple things you need to look for if you are interested in buying a Porsche Cayenne. And let's start with the drive shaft. So the drive shaft has a bearing towards the rear section of the drive shaft that tends to disintegrate, and it is described on the Porsche forums as a midget in your console hitting things with a hammer. That doesn't sound very good to me, but apparently this bearing goes out on almost all the early models and is semi-expensive to repair. So definitely keep an ear out for that, any noises, any odd noises in the drivetrain when you're looking at a car. If you're looking at a V8 Porsche Cayenne, which you should be if you're looking for one, there are problems with the coolant lines that run under the intake manifold. They're plastic in the early models and they tend to leak. So look out for, coolant dripping. It's not a great design. They went to a metal version later on. So either buy a later car or look out for that. Another thing you need to be cognizant of with the Cayennes is the early ones tend to have problems with the transmission. And those are very expensive transmissions to fix. So if that's not something that's up your alley, that you're already worried about buying one, just know that there is a joke on the Porsche forums that the best year Porsche Cayenne to buy is a 2007. They didn't make a Porsche Cayenne in 2007. Let's move on to the next set of cars you can buy for under $30,000 that have a Porsche badge on them. So let's talk about 986 and 987 Boxsters Caymans. Boxsters, especially the 986s, are crazy cheap, well under 10 grand, and it's a Porsche. How about that? Now, 987s, the later generation where you can get the Cayman or the Boxster, those are a little more, especially if you want something like a Cayman S or a Boxster S. You're looking at upper 20s for something like that, but you can get a base Cayman for around 20 grand. And like I said, a older Boxster for less than 10 grand. So you can run the whole gambit of under $30,000. These cars are super fun. They're not as powerful as 911s, but they are really fun to huck around because they're lighter. And with a Boxster, you can put the roof down. So if you're into that kind of thing, there you go. Things you need to look out for, especially on the early Boxsters, are cracked bore liners. This is sort of a hard problem to identify, being of where it is in the car, but basically there are reports of emulsified oil, and basically the really later symptom of a cracked bore liner is overheating. So if the needle really moves at all on an older Boxster, I would be quite leery because this is catastrophic engine failure and is going to be very expensive to fix. Other issues with the Porsche Boxster are the dreaded IMS bearing, which I will talk more about when I get into 911s, but keep that in mind. IMS bearings are, Boxsters are just as susceptible to those. In addition, you want to check for leaks. The rear main seal is known, is known to go on those cars and cause leaks. So just general leaks on the car can be pretty expensive if you have a Porsche certified technician handle.
Now, as we work our way up the Porsche food chain, we get to the 911. Now, the 911 is often considered the daddy or the top dog of Porsches. Now, those aren't my words, and I'll leave that up to you guys. The 911, like it or not, is the quintessential Porsche. I'm not saying it's the best, but it certainly has the most following. It's been around for the longest. It's just a formula that's been refined and refined over the years. But we move our way up to the 911. And thanks to the collectability of older air-cooled 911s, there are really only two 911s that you can buy for under $30,000. And that is the 996 and the 997 generation. Now, the 996 generation 911 is often criticized for its looks, its interior quality, for sharing parts with a Boxster. It's a lot of people really get up in arms about the 996 generation, and somewhat rightfully so. You know, the fact that it shares parts with a Boxster, it doesn't really look that good. But however you feel about that, you really can't argue that the 996 generation still had the performance of a 911. Like, it was still a really good performing car. Now, a 996 is a fantastic buy on the used market. You can find them for under 20 grand all day. There are so many that are under 20 grand because, like I said before, a lot of people that like 911s don't really like the 996 generation. Now, the other main reason that you can find a 996 for so cheap is not only because it's not as collectible, but because everyone's heard about this IMS bearing, right? A lot of people have heard about this intermediate shaft bearing that fails on these cars, which causes catastrophic engine failure. So your $20,000 car needs like a $40,000 engine replaced. I don't know if it's that much. It's a lot. Don't quote me on that. So when it comes to 996s, you definitely need to look out for the IMS, and you need to keep in mind that there are many different versions of an IMS bearing. The 99 cars had a dual row, which is not known to fail nearly as much as the other ones. The 2000 and 2005 is the sort of like problem child IMS bearing that I would definitely encourage people to replace if it hasn't been. Basically, the IMS is something that you need to factor into the cost of buying a 996 or hope that the previous owner has had it done. The other thing to look out for in the 996 generation is the timing chain components. There are a lot of reports of the timing chain guides breaking off in those and ending up in people's oil filters, or even worse, their oil pans where they clog the oil pickup. This is a semi-common problem with higher mileage 996s, and is something you should definitely be leery of when buying them. We've talked about our first 911 in this segment, the 996, but I'm driving a 997. In fact, my 997. So a 997 you can buy for under 30 grand now, which is sort of what sparked this whole segment in my mind. Was I've been a Porsche fan for a long time, but I didn't know you could buy a 997 for this little money. As my car beeps and I get really worried that it's something wrong, I'm low on fuel. It's cool. So these cars are under 30 grand. They're in new BRZ territory. Now, just like the 996, it's a 911. It doesn't need any introduction, but they've made a lot of changes, albeit subtle, from the 996 to the 997. Clarkson has his famous skit where he mistakenly gets into the old 996 when he's supposed to be reviewing the 997.
It is, look, it's the new, and that's the old one. See, I just came here this morning, I got in the wrong one. I am so sorry.
It's funny, legitimately. Like, the cars look very similar, but they're just different enough that in a few key ways, it's a lot better looking. What you need to look out for in the 997 generation, unfortunately, is still the IMS bearing in the earlier models. The 2005 definitely have it replaced. Unfortunately, in 2006, they revised it to basically a bigger bearing, which is known to be more robust. And it depends who you ask, but really the failure rate is pretty low on those cars, the 2006 models. The unfortunate part about it in the 2006 models is that they're not serviceable. So even if you wanted to replace it, you can't unless you disassemble the engine, which no one wants to do. Outside of the IMS bearing issues, you have some smaller issues with 997s. Coil packs are known to go, not a huge deal. Also slow start, slow crank on 997s is a common thing. There's a power distribution block that supposedly gets corroded, or there's also like a battery cable, alternator to battery cable that there was a revision for. So just some little things with 997s. In general, knock on wood, you know, I've only had this car for a month and I haven't had any problems, but in general, they're known to be pretty reliable. So which one is right for you? Well, that's up to you. I mean, if you need a car that you have a family and you need to haul family around in and you need more space, but you still like to have fun, you know, a Cayenne is a hell of a lot of car for the money. I mean, they were so expensive new, and it's a fun to drive SUV. If you like smaller cars, lighter cars that you can huck around, throw around, or you want to take the roof off of, you know, look at a Boxer. You don't have a lot of money to spend, look at a Boxer. Great cars still. They're on the cheaper end, and that's a lot of Porsche for your money. If you want the granddaddy Porsche, kind of the quintessential Porsche, it's got to be a 911. For under 30 grand, it's either got to be a 996, 997. You know, there's like a Porsche for everyone under 30 grand, and that's what I think is really, really cool. Once again, guys, this isn't a video about it's a good idea to own a Porsche under $30,000 as opposed to a BRZ. I'm going to leave that up to you, but I just want to kind of share all the modern Porsches that you can get for under 30 grand, which I think are a ton of car for the money. I hope you found this video informative. I know I have a lot of new subscribers who are Porsche fans, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time.